Good afternoon, good day, good evening. I don't know what time you're listening or where you're listening from. It's your boy, your host, NaRon Tillman, and you are with me for another episode of Walk in Victory. Speaking of victory, walk.
Warning, this is a public service announcement. The Walk in Victory podcast is where we have conversations purposed to evolve lives. You may not want to evolve. Then tune into another bleeping podcast. Everyone else, enjoy the show. And here's our host.
Good afternoon, good day, good evening. I don't know what time you're listening and or where you're listening from. It's your boy, your host, NaRon Tillman, and you are with me for another episode of Walk in Victory, where our goal is to help have conversations that will transform you from within. But speaking of transformation and victory walks, if you are going to be successful, you're going to have obstacles that will come to try to snuff out success. And let me define success, because I think that word is loosely used. A lot of times when people hear the word success, they equate it to external things. They're like, oh, that guy's successful. He has a Lamborghini. Oh, she's successful. She is Victoria's Secret model or whatever, and it's usually on the surface, external things, because we've been conditioned to equate success to what we obtain. There's successful people who may be homemakers, and on the surface, you're like, oh, she's in the house all day. But you don't notice the impact or reach or what it is that they do, because we've measured our success with our pocketbooks and or with our things, goods, which is why you see a lot of people sell out to get extra money or to get a car. And they're like, well, then when things unravel, they're like, I just thought I just needed to do this because I had to pay this bill and I had to, so we have people who are the attempt to do crazy things to obtain success that they have been driven to think is successful. Or we're watching unfold right here before our eyes, where we see people who have influence or who have power, who utilize their influence or their power, and they put people in pathological positions because people look up to them and they feel like they're successful. So in order for us to do this, I have to do this. And they use their power or their influence to define what success means. And they get people in compromising or uncompromising positions, and just in order to further their agenda. It's not what I'm talking about when I say when you're obtaining success. Its success starts with a mindset. It starts from within, and then it trickles its way outwardly. So as we're shifting our mind, rather I'm creating financial goals. There's nothing wrong with having financial goals. But I'm creating financial goals. You may see that in the midst of you reaching your financial goal, there might be some financial crisis that hit. Right? Oh man, every time I'm trying to, instead of beating this up, every time I'm trying to get somewhere, something happens. That's usually the lean in mindset. Or you might have a fitness goal, and you may see that you're working out and you're starting to do things and you're starting to feel good. And then boom, something happens, or entrepreneurial goal or whatever. But whatever you set your mind's eye to, there will always be resistance. There will always be some type of obstacle that you have to overcome. And once we overcome the obstacle, once we overcome the resistance, and we see our way to the other side of it, then we can stand and celebrate, and those obstacles, those things, those barriers that may look to impede us, become a part of our witness. And if you are, I'm looking for the word that I want to use. If you are aware enough to journal it, aware enough to take mental notes, you now used up the obstacle, the goal, the thing that you went through, and you can better prepare other people. where you can be guest on a podcast and share your story, or you can write a book and share your story, or you can or be a guest speaker in events and share your story. We all have a story, but can we streamline the story to impact other people's lives? And today we're going to have a conversation with our guest, Roy, who has an amazing story, but he's been able to streamline the story so that it can be impactful for you as we sit you at the feet of the masters. Roy, thank you for coming on to our Walk in Victory podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you don't mind telling our audience a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do, and we'll jump right into our conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Roy Kirchner, and I am a serial entrepreneur. I own a couple different businesses here. One is Ultimate 3D Printing Store, which is in the additive manufacturing 3D printing industry. I also have Ultimate 3D Printing Services, where we do the service side of the business. And then on top of that, I have where we build supercars, a thing called Vader Supercar. And I have an AI and video consulting company that I'm building and getting ready to open in 2025. So got a couple things going on, I would tell you.
Yeah, well, it's funny because when you talk to someone, they say, I'm a serial entrepreneur, and they get the bug and they start to see opportunities. Your eyes been trained to see an opportunity, jump on the opportunity, embrace the opportunity, and build the opportunity, right? But was it always like that? Did you always have that entrepreneurial eye? Did you always have the eye to see opportunity? What was it like before you became this person that you are now?
Yeah, I mean, we could go back. I graduated high school. Um, I was never good in school. I graduated high school with the fourth grade reading level. Couldn't really read or write when I graduated. Had no idea what to do with my life. Didn't really think I was going to be anything. Kind of felt that way. Kind of felt like I was not going to be successful. And then literally I was in Walmart one day and I had detailed cars at this dealership for like 2 months. It was a Honda store. And I saw the sales manager and he was behind me and he says, Roy, what are you doing with yourself? And at that time I was working in a pizzeria. I just graduated high school. I was working in a pizzeria and he goes, man, why don't you come sell cars? And he goes, I'll take you under my wing. I'll train you. I'll teach you. And I ended up getting into the car business and started selling cars. And the thing that I'll tell you was I just had a knack for it. I was good at communicating with people. And the very, very interesting thing about selling cars is, somebody would come in at 9 o'clock in the morning to buy a car and they owned a dry cleaning store. And they were like, Roy, dude, I bought a car from you, but it wasn't like buying a car. We're friends. He's like, listen, you took good care of me. He's like, I'll give you 6 months free dry clean. 2 hours later, a guy came in and he was a plumber and I sold him a car. But again, it wasn't like selling a car. I just had a connection with him. And he goes, Roy, your pipes burst at 3 o'clock in the morning. You know who to call. I'll get out of bed and I'll come help you. 2 hours later, a guy comes in. He owns a restaurant. He's like, Roy, you took such a good care of me. He's like, you got a nice date? You want to bring her in? He's like, I'll make sure you definitely get lucky tonight. He's like, I'll cook you the best meal you ever seen. So I started that way, really connecting with people and really being who I was, just being authentic, right? I grew up I was never had a lot of money. My mom worked 3 jobs to support me and my sister. My father wasn't around. And my mom did anything she could. So my goal was to help my mom graduate high school and help her pay the bills, right? And the beautiful thing about selling cars is people come in and when they're buying a car, you get to see where they live. You get to see where they work. You get to see how much money they make, right? And I found successful people and I just said, hey, do me a favor. I'm selling you a car, but let's do me a huge favor. Pretend like I'm your kid and bring me into work with you one day. And they're like, what? And I'm like, bring me into work one day. Cause if you're doing this well, I got to see how to become you because I want to be successful. And I just continued to do that until I found mentors, found people that literally said that Roy like lifted me up and said, "You're not stupid. Yeah, you have a disability. You can't read and write and but you're not stupid. You're smart. You have a way to communicate with people. You're authentic." And I just so lucky to find not what you say, the word mentor can mean different things, but I found people that wanted to invest in me, that wanted to see me succeed. And I wanted to succeed. I wanted to succeed, right? I wanted to become more. I wanted to help my mom and I wanted to be able to give her things and I wanted to be able to repay her, like live, breathe, and eating, taking care of me and my sister. So that was it. And then in the car business, when you sell cars, man, let me tell you something. You don't have a night or a weekend off. That's when people buy cars. So you may be making money, but you're working all the time. And when I did have time off, you're trying to do your laundry, you're trying to get ready for the next day, or you're trying to get certain things done. And those things on top of that, if I wasn't doing those things, I was asking for mentorship, right? I was going and knocking on the guys' doors that were successful, or I was connecting with them. So I really didn't have a lot of time to I guess you could say mess around, right? And I that's how I started.
Well, when you move from the car industry, and that's an amazing story, but when you move from the car industry, what was the next thing? When did you know, all right, I'm ready to take this, whatever the next step was, and what was going on?
Yeah, it was interesting. I worked my way up in the car business. I ended up overseeing the buy of a dealership for a big auto group. And overseeing the buy, we had brought in a marketing and advertising agency because what had happened is the buy sell could not occur. The old owner had put too much money in each of the pre-owned inventory. So we actually brought in a marketing and advertising agency to help us move all the pre-owned cars so the buy sell could happen because the new company that was buying it was not going to buy the pre-owned inventory. They just had too much money in it. So, you think about allocation of dollars in marketing and advertising to a car. Let's say it would be a couple $100. We would spend $1,000. So we spend double, triple, quadruple. So the agency that we were contracted with, they were local and the owner just couldn't understand why we were spending so much money. He used to come in every day and bring us like donuts. He loved us, right? Because we were spending all this money to sell the cars, and he's making a ton of money because he does marketing and advertising. And it was interesting. I had finished the buy. I was getting ready to go help run a Chevy dealership in Atlanta. And I was on my way there, and the owner of the marketing and advertising agency called me and said, "Roy, I heard you're done over at the dealership overseeing the buy." And I said, "Yeah, I'm getting ready to go to Atlanta. As soon as I get up there, I'll give you a call. We'll do some marketing and advertising together." And he says, "No," he's like, "I want you to come in and sit down with me." And at that point in time, it was interesting. I had a U-Haul. I was already driving to Atlanta, and he convinced me to turn around. And I turned around, went and slept on my mom's couch, and went into his marketing and advertising agency the next day. And I'm yelling at the guy, and he says, "Calm down. Let me show you." And he had done marketing and advertising for car dealerships, and they had done for hundreds and hundreds of car dealerships. And he wanted somebody that understood the car business to come in and be his operations director. And I ended up seeing what he had and seeing the operation, and we put a deal together, and I got out of the car business and started getting into marketing and advertising. And I transitioned. And it was interesting because for the first time in my life, I think the biggest shock was he goes, "By the way, you're working at this marketing and advertising agency, but you're working 9 to 6 Monday through
Oh,
Friday."
yeah, now you got
Nine to
time.
six Monday through Friday. I had never worked. I had never not worked a night or a weekend. So the first weekend that I had off, it was like the biggest shock. I had no idea what to do with myself. Like I was like, yeah, I never had off. I didn't know what it was like to have a weekend off, and it was the craziest thing. it was like a transition period. Like people say, like they're in the military and they're transitioning to like normal life. Well, I was in the car business and transitioning to normal life. And it was this crazy thing to think that I could make money, right? And I didn't have to work. I didn't have to live, breathe, and eat the dealership I was working at. But I would never give up being in the car business. Like I would never ever say that that didn't make me into who I was. Like I started in the car business selling cars, and I had great managers. I had great other car salespeople that took me under their wing and taught me how to truly sell, become a salesperson. I found mentors. I mean, it was a excellent thing. It kept me out of trouble when I was young, right? Because you're literally selling cars and you don't have time to get in trouble, right? Because you constantly got to be there nights and weekends. So I would never ever say like if you can sell cars, you can sell anything, right? So it's literally the most amazing thing. And that was some of my mentors. They were like, Roy, you can sell cars. Trust me, you can sell anything. Like if you learn how to sell cars, you can sell anything. And I would definitely say I know massive successful people that started in the car business because it ain't easy. Like it ain't sunshine and rainbows, man. It is hard work. And you got to remember, everybody in the world hates car sales,
Yes, yes, yeah.
right?
The
They
sleazy
hate
process.
like like the sleaziest people in the world are car salesmen. So, and that was the difference. I wasn't that person. If I sold you a car, right? I sold you a car and took care of you so well that you would send your sister, aunt, uncle, brother, cousin, friend to buy a car from me because I wasn't the typical car salesman, right? I was the guy that truly took care of you. So I think being real and being authentic and being genuine can only give you this positive. I wasn't salesy. I was who I was. Like I told people like I graduated high school with the fourth grade reading level. Like I had no idea what to do with my life, and all I wanted to do was help my mom. Like I was a real person, right? And they took to me, and they're like, and they like all I wanted to do was help them find the right car that was going to make their life better. So it's some of those types of things, man, that really brought me to where I grew, right? And it wasn't easy, like you said. You said it at the beginning of this thing. Listen, like we are who we are from the challenges that we've overcome in life, right? And the commitment in time, effort, and dedication that we put in. And some of the things that you go through in life make you who you are because you just don't. I had that mentality that I just don't give up ever, ever give up. It's that mental toughness. Like you just don't let something break you, right? And I've been through so many challenging things in my life, but I figured out, right, that mental toughness, right? And in overcoming challenges of disabilities, and there's a lot more that we could talk about of challenges that I've had, but entrepreneurship is winning it all or losing everything, right? I guess the biggest thing that helped me, right, in my life is this. I started selling cars. Well, if you can sell cars, you can sell anything. So I always had this thing in the back of my brain that you could take everything away from me tomorrow. And I'm talking everything. You could take my house, my cars, every asset I own. And you could put me on a plane and you could drop me anywhere in this country, in the United States of America, and you could put me at a car dealership and I'm going to sell cars and I'm going to get it all back. So you know what? Entrepreneurship is risky, right? But the risk to me was I always knew no matter what, I can get it all back. Drop me on, like I said, you could drop me at any dealership and I'm going to connect with people and I'm going to sell cars. So that was the thing that probably made me say, as I grew into a serial entrepreneur, as I grew into a successful business owner, it's risk, right? It's risk. But you know what? If I lose it all tomorrow, I'll just go jump on a plane and go to a dealership, or I'll go down the street and start working at a dealership and I'll make money. So
Your first business, when did you realize you're transitioning out, entrepreneurship is different than selling cars, it's different than being a sub manager. This is all on you now. What was it? What was it that drove you to start to lean into being an entrepreneur?
Yeah. So what leaned in is I was working for a marketing and advertising agency. And my job, I was the director of business development. And my job was to get the owner and vice president in to meet with the owner or general manager of the car dealership. So my job was to literally get them a meeting. If we got a meeting with the owner or general manager of a car dealership, our agency had an 83% closing
Mm.
ratio. So it is really hard to get that face-to-face meeting with an owner or general manager. But once we got in and told them who we are and what we can do and how we can help them, we had an 83% closing ratio. So my job was to get us the appointment. There was a guy that ran multiple car dealerships that I reached out to every single day, right? I called him every single day and I left him a voicemail. I emailed him every single day and left him an email. I sent him a handwritten letter by mail every single day. And I faxed him every single day. So this can kind of tell you how old I am. But every single day, 5 days a week, emailed, called, faxed it, and sent him a written letter in the mail. This guy called me on a Sunday and he says, Roy, this is da da da, you know who I am? And I'm like, absolutely 100% know you who you are. You run all these car dealerships. And he says, yes. He's like, I'll set up a meeting with you guys Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. And I've been going after this guy for 6 months. 6 months, right? 6 months of handwritten letters, 6 months of faxing, 6 months of calling. And I had finally set the appointment. So the owner and general manager of the agency, the owner and vice president of the agency, they were flipping out, right? They were flipping out because they knew who I was. They knew I had worked that hard to get in. And so they were excited to go. Everybody in the company was excited for the owner and the vice president to go in and meet with this guy. And they went in and the first question they asked, they said, who in the F is Roy Kirchner, right? And they said, that's our business development director. He goes, if he works anywhere near as hard as you guys, if you guys work anywhere near as hard when you're my age as he did to get you in here, you'll be my agency for life. He goes, I've never seen a more persistent guy in my entire life. And when they walked in the dealership, he had all the faxes on one side of the conference table.
Wow.
He had all the letters on the other, right? And they went in and they were like, let us tell you. He goes, I know who you are. I know everything about you. You're my new agency. Let's get to work. And we closed the deal right there because it was 6 months of me being persistent and constantly, and they knew who we worked with. They knew what we were about. They had already checked references. So he did the deal, right? And it was multiple dealerships. And we're flipping out, right? We're flipping out. And I get paid on each dealership we get. So the owner gets out of the meeting and he calls me. And like, I'm so excited. I'm flipping out, right? Because we had just closed all these dealerships. And the owner says to me, he goes, Roy, he goes, it was one appointment. I want to pay you as one dealer. He tried to be cheap, right? And I'll never forget, I was at home when he did this and I'm married and my wife ran over and she hung up on him and she looked me in the eye and she goes, plan your exit. I know you're done because he's ripping me off, right? He's literally, it was like 12 dealerships and he's paying me as one, like tons of money out of my pocket, right? And I had literally built up being the director of business development. We had 17 dealerships and I took us to 117 in less than a year. I took him from a car to a Bentley. I took him from a house to a mansion. I'm not saying he didn't have, here, they didn't do what they said they would do. I worked for a really good agent, but I got him into the dealerships and they closed the deals. But I got him in, like I was persistent as can be. And my wife goes, you're done. And I said, I'm 100,000,000% done. She goes, plan your exit because we were spending money as fast as we made. So I continued to work for him, but saved up money and said, I'm doing this myself. Like if I can make him that successful, I can make myself that successful. And that's what got me into entrepreneurship.
Mm.
That was the turning point in my life that I said I had worked for 2 marketing and advertising agencies. I had grown their agencies, and I said, "You know what? I wanna do it for myself," because at the end of the day, he paid me great money. I'm not gonna tell you he didn't pay me really good money, but it's his customers at the end of the day. They're not mine. If I leave, it's all his. And I said, "You know what? I don't wanna make somebody else a millionaire. I don't want to take them from a house to a Bentley, a car to a mansion. I want to do it myself." And I started my entrepreneurship journey at that exact second. So
What was the first thing that you got into?
I got into marketing and advertising. That's what I got into.
The thing
I
that I was
stayed
good
in
at
the
already.
course that I was. I was already good at it. I stayed into it, but boy, it is so different doing it yourself, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Entrepreneurship, it's not this easy thing, right? You don't realize like building the entire foundation from the ground up and running a business, right, is this super easy thing, right? I mean, you've got, people don't realize like you own a business, and when you're starting, you're starting at the beginning. So you're every department, right? You're the accounting department, you're the sales department, you're the support
No one talked
department,
to me.
you're the receptionist, you're everything, right? You're every single facet of the business because and if you do it wrong, right? If you think, oh my gosh, I need to go out and get all this debt and buy an office and hire these people, that's the wrong thing to do, right? You got to stay lean, mean machine at the beginning, and you got to make sure that what you're doing is going to work. You got to get the customers. Really, you got to work 10 times harder, right? Because now they're your customers and you don't want to fail them. And that's how you're going to build your book of business, right? Is doing business the right way. And you got to start with one client, and you got to make sure that they now become your referral, right? They become like your testimonial. So you got to really work hard, and you're working with nobody else. So you're live, breathe, and eat in the business that you're building. I mean, you got to have the drive and momentum and courage to do it. But there's nothing better in this world, right? Because it brings this whole new level of person that you are to the forefront, right? In the achievements that you make. And you got to remember, nobody can, like, nobody is
No,
it, being at the top is a very lonely place,
they
right?
go.
Owning a business is a very lonely place, right? Because nobody knows what you're going through, right?
How was it transition where you're one of the top sales guys and being the top sales guy in the car business, being the top one of the most persistent, so you one of the most persistent in your sales business, the marketing business, then probably was one of the top earners. To now, you can put in the same amount of work and make a huge, you can see a considerable dip in your money because you can't live the same lifestyle. Most people think that you can live the same lifestyle, and that's why businesses don't work. Like, well, I was a top earner in the agency, so I could start my own agency now, and I'm going to live the same lifestyle. Well, how was that dip in lifestyle, dip in finances? Because now I have other expenses, so I can't bring it all to my personal life. Things that has to take place first before I can pay me, and I have to climb my way up in my own business to reach a certain financial level. How was that shift in mindset for you when you got into it?
I was okay with it because again, I grew up, and I'm just being honest, I grew up very without things,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Me too.
So
Yeah.
I knew that I was building something, like I was ready to risk it all to win, right? And I think that's some of the things that the word entrepreneurship is,
Mhm.
right? Or really feeling if you're a true entrepreneur is you've got to be able to, everything comes before you. Like everything comes before your success, right? You just said it. Like literally, when you have employees, they come before you. Rent comes before you. Everything comes before you can do anything. And, you gotta be willing to learn from your failures, right? Hindsight is 2020. You can look in the past and you can see every single thing you've done wrong and you've learned from those things. But the things that you do wrong, like if you want to harp on those, I'd be crying every day. Like I could stay in bed and cry every single day for all the things I did wrong. Like life is doing shit wrong, right? Life is making mistakes. The key is to learn from your mistakes and be around people, be around other people that can guide you to make less mistakes.
Yeah.
But mistakes are part of the game. Like they are going to crush you or they're going to define. And 100%, they're either going to crush you and they're going to take everything from you, or they're going to define you, and you're going to battle through those mistakes, right? And you're gonna persevere through good times and bad.
You move from the car industry, the marketing industry, and I'm pretty sure it helped to develop what you are now. Now you're in like this whole digital space. How the hell did you get from from downtown to uptown? I mean, like that's a whole huge shift in business.
Yeah, mine was yep. So mine was I was in marketing and advertising. We had a successful marketing and advertising agency, and we wanted to diversify. We wanted to go
Okay.
into something else. And long story short, I saw a 3D printer. I saw literally a 3D printer printing, and I couldn't take my eyes off of it. And all I remember is some guy tapping me on the shoulder and saying, "Hey, buddy, you got to leave." And I'm like, "Well, it's not done print." And it was printing this piece. And so I had to leave because he was closing. And I left and started studying 3D printing additive manufacturing, right? And I knew by studying it and understanding, I went and bought one right away. And I just started messing around with 3D printing on the side of owning a marketing and advertising agency. And I convinced my business partner, I said, "Dude, this is the new technology of the world. Like, we've got to get into it." And long story short, we made time for me to create a 3D printing business while he took care of the marketing and advertising business. And I ended up opening a 3D printing additive manufacturing business in 2015, right? And I'll never forget, like when we opened the business, again, same entrepreneurship, I convinced my wife to allow me to take all the furniture out of the house, put it in the garage, besides our master bedroom. And I flew in by air cargo the entire business to the airport of Tampa, hired just regular movers and moved it all into my house. The entire business. It was in my house except for my master bedroom. I'm talking living room, kitchen, bedrooms, and all the furniture's in the garage. And we had a successful marketing and advertising agency, but I don't know if this is going to be successful 3D printing, right? And, so I put it in the house, and next thing you know, I turned on the e-commerce store online. And the second day, a guy contacted me from Australia, and he said he wants to buy a 3D printer. He emailed me, but he goes, "I don't know if you're going to rip me off or not. You're in like Tampa, Florida." And I said, "Well, Skype with me." And I talked to him and I said, "Listen, I'm going to sell you the 3D printer. I'm going to drop ship it from China to you in Australia. You're going to pay me by credit card. If you don't get it, you can dispute the credit card, but I'm going to drop ship it right from China to you in Australia, and you're going to get the printer." I ended up selling him the printer. He got it, went on to Reddit, reddit.com, and told people I was a safe place to buy. And then next thing you know, another guy went on to Reddit, said I was a safe place to buy. In the first month in business, I did $44,000 worth of like a $429 printer I sold to Australia, $44,000 worth, all to Australia. So we were blown away, from doing that. And it was all from Reddit and no advertising, no marketing. I just got lucky that way. And then my wife said, "Get out of the house, go get a place," because she wanted her house back. So we rented a place and I started growing it from there. And the biggest change for me was COVID. So I want to kind of explain to people the day before the country shut down, we're relatively okay business. I had a 1,900 square foot facility, had 4 employees, and we're getting about 7 to 10 calls a day. The country shut down with COVID. I went to 200 to 300 calls a day, every day, 7 days a week.
Oh, it helped
I
you.
went from 4 employees to 38 employees. I
Wow.
went from 1,900 square feet to occupying 65,000 square feet in less than 90 days. I became the 6th fastest growing company in Tampa Bay, Florida in 2021. So I was awarded by the Tampa Bay Business Journal, the 6th fastest growing company. And most people ran up and said, congratulations, right? And then meanwhile, I promise you this, I was dying inside, right? Like, you just became the 6th fastest growing company. And most people would be like, yeah, I did that, right? Imagine becoming the 6th fastest growing company in Tampa Bay when COVID's going on. You're hiring people, you're in a technology that there's no school for it. There's no policies, there's no procedures, there's no manuals. I woke up every single morning saying, why did I just buy a McDonald's? Everything's figured out. And I'm growing so fast. You didn't even have a chance to train people. Like, we were so busy. You're just trying to put bodies in place, right? And it is the most, it is things that you never think could happen. The challenges, the things that occurred. So you figure out how to hire the right people. You figure out how to put processes, procedures, manuals in place, and you make a ton of mistakes and you lose a lot of money, and make a ton of mistakes. But you defy the odds and you keep on growing it. And in 2022, we were still one of the fastest growing companies in Tampa Bay. An interesting thing happened in 2021 when I was awarded the 6th fastest growing company. I was told that the mayor of Tampa wanted to come interview me that day. It was June of 2021. I had actually gotten sick. I was in the hospital, and the doctor walked in that day and looked me in the eye and said, Roy, I don't know if you're going to live or die. I was on my deathbed. I had abandoned my company and I was fighting for my life. And nobody was allowed in. It was COVID, still, Delta virus 2021. Nobody was allowed in. My wife wasn't allowed in. My friends weren't allowed in. My family wasn't allowed in. Nobody was allowed in the room. So it entirely changed my outlook on life, right? Because you're laying in this hospital bed, not knowing if you're going to live or die, and you're replaying your entire life, and you're figuring out what's important to you in the world, right? Like, what is my purpose on this planet, right? And it didn't break me, right? I survived, but it changed the way I thought, right? And you said it at the very beginning of this interview. What is success? Please understand, people, success is different for everybody, right? It's not all about the money. It could be the family. Like, success could be like just raising your kids, or it could be, building a business, or it could be giving back to the community or helping the less fortunate. Success is defined by you and you personally alone. You have to decide what is the most important thing. And if you achieve that success, right, the success of what you have to look and say, what is my success? What is really going to make me happy, right? And you have to find that from within. Nobody can give it to you.
Mm.
Like, it doesn't, this is not society. You have to decide what is going to make you happy in this world and what success truly looks like from within. And you determine at that point in time, right, what success means.
Mm.
And I think that's what that did to me, right? It said, like, this is my purpose on this planet. This is what I want to do. And I started looking at things differently, and I started working on achieving what success looked like to me, right?
Wow. what an amazing story of resiliency. And I'm glad that you are at the place because during our whole conversation, right, people can say, well, Roy is successful. He got the six, but then your whole mindset shift when you mortality, mortality, nobody's there, nobody can visit you. And that time was really, really difficult for the entire country, right? And our definition of success starts to transform. And I really appreciate what you're doing and how you're helping other entrepreneurs to really understand. But I do have to say that somewhere along the line, you had to have some kind of a rabbit putting it. You went on it from high school, you meet somebody, they bring you to the car dealership. From the car dealership, you meet somebody, they bring you into the sales. From sales, you meet somebody, you know what I mean? Like everywhere you go, something has been on you. And I think the true level of your success is the way that you connect with people.
It absolutely is. And to be honest with you, putting faith in God
Mhm.
first is probably what has led, not what has absolutely led to my success. Like believing in Him, and He goes in and out of your life, right? And He just did. I'm just being honest. He went in and out of my life. Sometimes He's more important. Sometimes He wasn't. Like it didn't feel like it was as important as it should be. And again, I think that defies, success when you're laying there almost dying and you connect with him that way, it changes you, and like I said, it brings you in I think, you know, I think everything happens for a reason. I think my success was from meeting the right people, right? But it's from him
Yeah,
putting those people in front of me,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
um, Stuff like that. So, and not giving up. Like, don't let something get in your way. You battling yourself is the hardest thing in the world, right? The battles you have in your head are the biggest battles you ever have, right? Saying you're not worthy, like, why is this happening to me? All these types of things. Everybody has it, right? It's battling, it's overcoming those types of things, right? Because those come in like when you're down and out, you're down and out. Like, so it's, I mentor people now and I tell people like, you gotta start, like I have one right now, he's an entrepreneur and, things aren't going his way. And, he finally opened up and said to me, because some people don't want to talk about this, right? It's hard, right? It's like, who can you trust? And like, nobody goes through what I'm going through. And, I'll look like a failure or I'm a fake. And I said to him, I said, man, I'm a guy, I get up at 4:30 in the morning. And if I'm not feeling right that day, man, I start putting on encouraging. I go to YouTube and I put on motivational videos, right? That get me in this mindset, right? And listen to like Denzel Washington and Matthew McConaughey and Tony Robbins and people that like it goes in my head and then it puts me in that right frame of mind, right? To have a successful day, cause so it's mindset, mental toughness, you know.
Well, there you have it, everybody. You can walk making excuses. Oh man, I only got a fourth grade reading acumen. Oh man, COVID came on. Whatever excuse we want to make, they're all lined up for us to make. Or you can join me and Roy as we walk in victory. We don't walk with our heads down. We don't walk making excuses. We walk looking for opportunities. And if you seek, you shall find. But most of all, we walk in victory. We don't ask for cash apps, Venmos, or anything like that. But what we do ask is that you hit the like and subscribe button. If this is your first time listening to us, you can go to our website, walkinvictory.me. All of Roy's information is there. Go and get that clarity call. Go into his website, connect with him. The inspiration is there for you to continue to develop in your personal journey. That's what we want to do. We help develop people from the inside out to transform and become the better version of yourself or the truest version of yourself or the most successful version of yourself, whichever one you like to do. Enjoy the rest of your day. Peace. Wow, that was